This video will cover APA 6th edition. This is designed for Professor Murphy's business management classes. My name is Professor Harmon and I'm going to be your guide for APA 6th edition. In this video I'm going to be going over in-text citation and reference-less citation areas of APA that we often see with papers of Professor Murphy's classes. It is worth noting that we are covering APA 6th edition. When you go on the web, you are probably going to run into a number of help resources that talk about APA 7th edition. Those are not going to apply. There are a lot of changes between 6th and 7th edition. Please make sure that if you are using online resources to support your citation, that are only using resources discussing APA 6th edition. One of the quirks of APA is how we deal with in-text citations or citations within the actual body of your paper. The first thing to note is whether the number of authors you have for your individual resource. If you have 1 to 2 authors, 3 to 5 authors, or 6 or more authors, that will impact how you format your individual citations. When you have 1 to 2 authors, it's pretty straightforward. If it's named in your signal phrase, you will do research by Wegner and Petty, 1994, or if you do it in the parenthetical, you will articulate Wegner ampersand Petty, 1994. What you'll notice about these citations is we do not have the full name of the article. APA is what's considered to be a name-date citation style, so the only thing that is necessary is the author or authors and the date. If you have 3 to 5 authors, so if 1 to 2 authors, you list them all out every single time. If you have 3 to 5 authors, the first time you see a source, you need to list out every single author. So whether this be research by Cornerstone, Sunbury, and Harlow, or the parenthetical as we see it here, the first time you see an article by 3 to 5 authors, list every single author out, followed by the date. And then every subsequent time, all you need to do is list the first author, followed by the phrase et al. What you'll notice by the phrase et al. Is there's a period after the AL, but not after the ET. Now for 6 or more authors, every single time, you simply put the first author followed by the phrase et al. And again, we put the period after the AL. So please make sure to pay attention to whether your article or resource has 1 to 2, 3 to 5, or 6 or more authors. The next to pay attention to is whether you're using a direct quote or a paraphrase. If you're using a direct quote, that means you're pulling lines exactly as you read it in the original source. If you are using a direct quote, you need to have 3 pieces of information for an in-text citation. You need to have the author or authors, the date, and then the page number. You can either articulate it as the author, date, the direct quote, followed by the page number. And what you'll notice that also is that the period is after the end of the page number. Alternately, if you articulate in a parenthetical, you can list the author, date, and page number at the very end of your direct quote. And again, that is followed with the period. Sometimes in our resources, we do not have page numbers. We still need to guide our reader directly to where that thing is originally articulated. If we are looking at a website, what we can do is instead of page number, we can simply articulate a paragraph number. So that means I would count down to the individual paragraph and provide that so my reader could find the direct quote. Now for those of you who have the online version of your textbook, you still will need to guide your reader to that source even though your online version of the textbook does not have page numbers. To help guide Professor Murphy to your direct quote, again, you will start with the author, the date, and at the very end, you will list, instead of a page number, you'll list the chapter, followed by a dash, and then the section. And this is going to help guide your reader there. Alternately, if you include it in the parenthetical after a direct quote, include the author, the date, and then the chapter and the section. Now for those of you that are paraphrasing, and you will probably be including some paraphrasing in your papers, and what you'll notice also is you continue to write and your writing advances, you'll be using more and more paraphrases. For a paraphrase, you only need 2 pieces of information. You need to include the author and the date, either in the signal phrase or author and the date, author or authors and the date in the parenthetical. One thing in APA that you can use is if you don't have an individual for an author, a lot of times you can use an organization for an author. So for example, we are utilizing something authored by the U.S. Small Business Administration. One of the things that APA recommends is you have something with a common abbreviation is that you can include the abbreviation, signal it to your authors, and then throughout the remainder of the paper you can simply use that abbreviation to identify your corporate author. So for example, if I did in a study by the U.S. Small Business Administration, I would first identify to my reader that I'm going to be using a abbreviation by putting SBA right before the date. And every other time I see this source, I can either list SBA 2013 or in the parenthetical SBA 2013. If the first time I see it is at the very end of the sentence, in the parenthetical citation, what I'll need to use is simply put U.S. Small Business Administration, then I put SBA in square brackets, and then the year. And then every other time afterwards, I can either introduce it as SBA 2013 or SBA 2013. APA also has specific rules for how we deal with numbers. If you are writing out something that is from numbers 1 through 9, you express it as words. So if you have 1 student, it will be ONE student. But for numbers 10 and above, they express as numerals. So if you have 11 students, it will be a numeric 11 students. Now that we've learned some of the fundamental rules underpinning in-text citations, one of the things that we find students struggle with the most is how to balance their citations within an individual paragraph. If you have something that is a long paraphrase, it is not necessary to quote or put a in-text or parenthetical citation after every single sentence. One way to do this is to kind of maintain the thread throughout the entire paragraph. So for example, at the very beginning of discussing a work, we need to help our reader know that we are now discussing something that is attributed to someone else. So here, for example, we're pulling from a source written by one author, Long, in 2013. So I introduce it saying, Long 2013 described. Now I'm going to continue to talk about this individual article, but instead of putting Long 2013, Long 2013, Long 2013 without this entire paragraph, what I can do instead is articulate, the author went on to outline. She listed the following common mistakes this article implies. And so as you can see, I kind of maintain the connection to that original source without having to put an in-text citation on every single line. It's also bad form to simply put a citation at the very end of the article. Remember, we need to let our reader know when we're pulling from other people's ideas. Now, when I'm writing through this, if for some reason I was talking about an article by Long, but then I switched over to an article by Harmon, I will of course need to let my reader know that I'm pulling from a different author, and I would need to go Harmon 2013. Furthermore, if I talk about one article in one paragraph, and then in the next paragraph continue to talk about that article, I will need to reintroduce that source in the next paragraph to let my reader know that I am still talking about this same source. If you have any problems with writing or balancing citation, I strongly encourage you to seek help from the writing room. This can be a very difficult thing to do. Now, while we have mentioned some methods to this, if you are ever concerned, always err on the side of oversighting rather than underciting. Underciting, it can be a form of plagiarism, and that has its own list of consequences. So be careful as you go through and articulate your in-text citations within your body of your paper. To talk about reference list citations, so how you form the citations in the reference list at the back of your paper. When you cite an ebook in APA, you start out with the authors. In this case, we have 3 authors, and so we will list them all out. We start out with last names followed by initials. We then follow with the year the book was published, the name of the book. What you will notice about the name of the book is it is in italics, and also you capitalize the first word, but not any of the other words. The main exception to this is if you have a subtitle, which we'll talk about when we talk about journal articles, or if you have a proper noun, somebody's name. What you'll probably notice, and this is probably going to be very similar to your textbook, is that we have an edition listed. Make sure you articulate the edition of the book that you're looking at. Follow that with a period. And then for electronic books, we need to find the publisher's homepage. We put retrieve from and then the URL to that publisher's homepage. What you'll notice with APA 6th edition is that you are not to have hyperlinked URLs, so make sure you remove that hyperlink. If you find a journal in the library databases, many times these journal articles will have what's called a DOI, or a digital object identifier. If you have a journal article with a DOI, this is the form of citation you will need to follow. Again, with APA, we articulate the authors. Always keep them in the original order that they're listed on the article. We then follow that with the date. What you'll notice is on the front of a journal article, usually at the top or the bottom, there will be a little citation statement. This is the year that we want to include. Once we include that, we're going to put the name of the journal article. And the journal article, you'll notice here, is we capitalize the first word of the title, and then if we have a subtitle, we capitalize the first word of that, but all the other major words will be lowercase. After we include the article title, we need to include the journal title. This is the publication. We need to put the full name of the journal title. Sometimes you'll notice that the titles will be abbreviated. APA wants you to put the full title. Make sure you capitalize all the major words, and this will be italicized. We then follow this with the volume number. You'll notice that the volume number is italicized. We follow that with the page numbers of the entire article, and then when we have a DOI, we include DOI colon and then the 10 dot number, which is the actual DOI number. Sometimes we'll see http://dx.doi.org. That's okay if you include that. Just be consistent with all the DOIs in your paper, and make sure if you include something that is a hyperlink that you actually remove the blue and underline. Sometimes our journal articles do not contain a DOI. In that case, we list the article out as we would with the journal article with a DOI, but instead what we're going to do is we're going to take the name of the journal, so in this case is Sociology Religion, and we're going to go out on the web and we're going to find the home page for that journal. So this is Oxford Journals, the publisher, and they put out the Sociology Religion journal. And our job is to go and provide a path for our reader to retrieve this from the Soquel oxfordjournals.org. You don't need to find the individual article on that journal homepage. Your only responsibility is to drop your reader off on that homepage and walk away. Make sure you also remove the hyperlink here, and there is no need to put an access date or retrieve from date. If you access a newspaper online, you will begin with the author or authors. And what is unique here is instead of just putting the year, you will also want to put the day and the month. Then include the name of the page, capitalize only the first word, and if there's a subtitle, capitalize that first word. Put the name of the online newspaper in italics, capitalizing all the major words. And then simply put a retrieve from, and in this case you're going to put the full URL so that when Professor Murphy clicks on the URL, he is able to get to the actual article you are looking at. Please remember to remove the hyperlink from this citation. When citing a website in APA, a lot of times you can either have individuals as authors, or sometimes, as we mentioned earlier, you can have a corporate author. If you have individuals as authors, simply list them out. With a website, if you have the month and the day available, you can list that. When you list the name of the web page, again, you'll capitalize the first word but leave everything else lowercase unless it's a proper noun. You will also italicize the name of the web page. Then you will put retrieve from, and then include the full URL to the page itself. Remember to remove the hyperlink. For a citation from a website with a corporate author, it's exactly the same, except instead of putting individuals, you'll put the full name of the corporate author and follow that with a period. That concludes our overview of in-text citations and reference-less citations according to the APA 6th edition manual. Another video will be providing an overview of how to format your paper according to APA style.